North Korean officers get ready to sign the Korean War armistice in 1953. Soviet tanks enter Czechoslovakia to stop protests for freedom in 1968. US and Soviet soldiers celebrate together at the end of World War II in 1945. A big atomic bomb explodes over the ocean near Bikini Atoll in 1946. US military staff monitor world threats in a Cold War command center in the 1960s. A British soldier walks through a trench during the Korean War in the early 1950s. An East German soldier watches across the Berlin Wall during the Cold War in the 1960s. An East German soldier jumps over barbed wire to escape to the west in 1961. Churchill, Truman and Stalin meet at the Potsdam Conference in 1945. People protest against nuclear weapons in Scotland in the 1960s. Protesters block Soviet tanks during the Prague Uprising in 1968. A woman speaks across the Berlin Wall to someone on the other side in the 1960s. Two women control airport traffic during World War II in the 1940s. People watch a US plane bring supplies during the Berlin airlift in 1948. People stand on steps to look over the Berlin Wall in the early 1960s. US tanks and soldiers guard Checkpoint Charlie during the Berlin crisis in 1961. Soviet and American tanks face each other at Checkpoint Charlie in 1961. Barbed wire surrounds the Brandenburg Gate during the Berlin Wall's early days in 1961. An East German guard watches West Berlin through binoculars in the 1960s. A girl sits alone by the Berlin Wall after being separated from family in 1961. President Kennedy speaks to a cheering crowd in West Berlin in 1963. Checkpoint Charlie stands as a Cold War reminder in Berlin in the 1990s. US planes are loaded with supplies during the Berlin airlift in 1948. US soldiers use radar and radios in a Cold War command center in the 1950s. People march for civil rights in the United States in the 1960s. Elvis Presley meets President Nixon at the White House in 1970. Churchill, Roosevelt and Stalin meet at the Yalta Conference in 1945. Soviet missiles are shown during a military parade in Moscow in the 1960s. Children walk along the Berlin Wall in the 1960s. National Guard confront student protesters at Kent State University in 1970. Soviet missiles are shown during a military parade in Moscow in the 1960s. Children walk along the Berlin Wall in the 1960s. National Guard confront student protesters at Kent State University in 1970. People in West Berlin watch an East German soldier behind the Berlin Wall in 1961. President Kennedy visits a military command center during the Cold War in the 1960s. Vietnam War veterans march against war in the United States in the 1970s. US and Soviet soldiers celebrate together at the end of World War II in 1945. Winston Churchill gives the Iron Curtain speech in the United States in 1946. President Truman signs the Marshall Plan to help Europe after World War II in 1948. Soviet leaders stand by a plane during a Cold War visit in the 1950s. East German workers build the Berlin Wall in the early 1960s. Fidel Castro and Che Guevara marched during the Cuban Revolution in the late 1950s. A Soviet hammer and sickle sign lies on the ground as the USSR begins to collapse in 1991. President Kennedy gives a speech about the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. Soviet missiles are paraded in Red Square during a military show in the 1960s. Soviet missiles are paraded through Moscow during the Cold War in the 1960s. US scientists launch a test rocket during early space research in the 1950s. US Army test a giant snow vehicle in the Arctic during the Cold War in the 1950s. Fidel Castro meets Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau in Cuba in the 1970s. Polish resistance fighters pose with weapons in a forest during World War II in the 1940s. US soldiers watch an atomic bomb test in the desert in the 1950s. Anti-Soviet fighters pose with weapons in Eastern Europe after World War II in the 1940s. South Africans march against apartheid laws in the 1970s. Leaders meet in a war room to discuss global threats during the Cold War in the 1960s. Protesters block Soviet tanks during the Prague Uprising in 1968. Crowds tear down the Berlin Wall and celebrate in 1989. US and Soviet tanks face each other at Checkpoint Charlie in 1961. People sit on top of the Berlin Wall with "Freedom" written below in 1989. A Korean girl carries her baby brother past a US tank during the Korean War in 1951. North Korean soldiers carry a wounded comrade during heavy fighting in the Korean War in 1950.